Welcome to our tranquil space, a place created with one gentle purpose to help you settle into the deepest, most complete sleep your mind and body have been longing for. You've carried so much through this day, so many thoughts, so many emotions, so many things unspoken. But for this moment, for this small pocket of calm, you don't need to hold any of it. Let every thought, every worry, every unfinished plan rest quietly outside the door. Now allow yourself to find a truly comfortable position. Feel the soft surface beneath you supporting your weight, inviting you to release a little more and a little more as each part of your body gently sinks into the mattress. Relax your forehead, relax your jaw, relax your shoulders. Let your hands rest effortlessly. Let your breath fall into a slow, natural rhythm. Relax your mind, and as your breath continues to soften, we gently drift into tonight's reflection, a quiet question that has followed human hearts for generations. Are you in love, or is it simply possession? Erich Fromm's perspective. Is love an art? According to the philosopher and psychoanalyst Erich Fromm, if love is an art, it requires knowledge and it requires effort. Or is love merely a pleasant sensation, an experience that is a matter of chance, something a person falls into if they are lucky? This analysis is based on the first premise, that love is an art, while the vast majority of people today, Fromm argued, undoubtedly believe in the latter. This isn't because people think love is unimportant. On the contrary, they are starved for it. They watch countless films about happy and unhappy love stories. They listen to hundreds of sentimental songs about love. And yet, hardly anyone thinks that there is anything that needs to be learned about love. Erich Fromm identified a peculiar attitude, a set of premises that combine to uphold this deep-seated error. The first, and perhaps most common error, is that most people see the problem of love primarily as that of being loved, rather than that of loving, of one's own capacity to love. For them, the problem is not their own maturity, but how to be lovable. In pursuit of this goal, they follow several paths. One path, used especially by men, is to become successful, to be as powerful and rich as the social margin of one's position permits. Another path, used especially by women, is to make oneself attractive by cultivating the body, dress, and appearance. Other ways of making oneself attractive, used by both men and women, involve developing pleasant manners, having interesting conversation, being helpful, modest, and inoffensive. Many of these methods for becoming lovable are, in fact, the very same methods used to become successful, to win friends and influence people. What most people in our culture mean by lovable is essentially a mixture of being popular and having sex appeal. The second premise behind the attitude that there is nothing to be learned about love is the assumption that the problem of love is the problem of an object, not the problem of a faculty. People tend to think that to love is simple, but that to find the right object to love or to be loved by is the difficult part. This attitude has deep roots in the development of modern society. A key historical fact here is the great change that occurred in the 20th century regarding the choice of a love object. In the Victorian age, as in many traditional cultures, love was largely not a spontaneous personal experience that might then lead to marriage. On the contrary, marriage was contracted by convention, either by the families, by a marriage broker, or based on social considerations. Love was supposed to develop after the marriage had been concluded. But in the last few generations, the concept of romantic love has become almost universal in the Western world. People are now in search of this personal experience of love, which then should lead to marriage. This new concept of freedom in love greatly enhanced the importance of the object over the importance of the function. This focus on the object is intensified by another feature of contemporary culture. Our entire society is based on the appetite for buying, on the idea of a mutually favorable exchange. Modern happiness consists in the thrill of looking at shop windows and buying everything one can afford. We look at people in a similar way. For a man, an attractive girl is a prize he is after. For a woman, an attractive man is the same. Attractive becomes a term for a nice package of qualities that are popular and sought after on the personality market. This links directly to Fromm's later concept of the marketing character, a person who experiences themselves as a commodity. A person's sense of falling in love thus develops only with regard to human commodities that are within reach of their own possibilities for exchange. Here we find a rarely discussed detail of Fromm's analysis: love as a market transaction. A person is out for a bargain. The object should be desirable from the standpoint of its social value, and at the same time should want me, considering my own assets and potentialities. Two people fall in love when they feel they have found the best object available on the market, considering the limitations of their own exchange values. In a culture governed by a marketing orientation and material success, it is no surprise that human love relations follow the exact same pattern of exchange that governs the commodity and labor markets. The third error is the confusion between the initial experience of falling in love and the permanent state of being in love, or, as Fromm would say, standing in love. When two people who were strangers suddenly let the wall between them break down and feel close, this moment of oneness is one of the most exhilarating and exciting experiences in life. For people who have been isolated and without love, this miracle of sudden intimacy is all the more wonderful. But this type of love is, by its very nature, not lasting. The two persons become well acquainted. Their intimacy loses its miraculous character until their antagonisms, disappointments, and mutual boredom kill what is left of the initial excitement. But in the beginning, they don't know this. They take the intensity of the infatuation, this being crazy about each other, as proof of the intensity of their love, while it may only prove the degree of their preceding loneliness. There is hardly any activity which is started with such tremendous hopes and expectations, and yet which fails so regularly as love. If this were the case with any other activity, people would be eager to know the reasons for the failure, or they would give up. Since giving up love is impossible, there is only one adequate way to overcome this failure: to examine the reasons for it, and to proceed to study the meaning of love. The first step is to become aware that love is an art, just as living is an art. If we want to learn how to love, we must proceed in the same way we would proceed if we wanted to learn any other art, say music, painting, carpentry, or medicine. The process of learning any art can be divided into two parts. One, the mastery of the theory; the other, the mastery of the practice. But aside from theory and practice, there is a third factor: The mastery of the art must be a matter of ultimate concern. There must be nothing in the world more important than the art. Here, Fromm suggests, lies the answer to why people so rarely try to learn this art, despite their failures. In spite of the deep-seated craving for love, almost everything else is considered more important: success, prestige, money, power. Almost all our energy is used for learning how to achieve those aims, and almost none is used to learn the art of loving. Perhaps, Fromm muses, this is because only those things are considered worthy of learning with which one can earn money or prestige, and love, which only profits the soul, but is profitless in the modern sense, is a luxury we feel we have no right to spend much energy on. This analysis, therefore, will first discuss the theory of love, which comprises the greater part of the work, and only then will it turn to the practice of love. Any theory of love, according to Erich Fromm, must begin with a theory of man, of human existence. To understand love, we must first understand the fundamental problem that love attempts to solve. What is essential in the existence of man is the fact that he has emerged from the animal kingdom, from the world of instinctive adaptation. He has transcended nature, and yet, he never truly leaves it. He is a part of it. But once he is torn away from this original unity with nature, he cannot return. Once thrown out of paradise, which Fromm interprets as the state of original, pre-human oneness with nature, cherubim with flaming swords block his way. Should he try to return, man, unlike the animal, cannot go back. He can only go forward by developing his most human tool, his reason. He must find a new harmony, a human one, to replace the pre-human harmony which is irretrievably lost. When man is born, both as an individual and as a species, he is thrown out of a situation which was definite as instincts, into a situation that is indefinite, uncertain, and open. The only certainty he has is about the past and about the future, only that it is death. Man is gifted with reason. He is life being aware of itself. This is his blessing and his curse. He has an awareness of himself as a separate entity. He is aware of his own short lifespan, of the fact that he is born without his will and will die against his will. He is aware that he will die before those whom he loves, or they will die before him. He has an awareness of his aloneness and his separateness, of his utter helplessness before the forces of nature and society. All of this, Fromm argues, makes his separate, disunited existence an unbearable prison. He would become insane if he could not find a way to liberate himself from this prison, to reach out, and to unite himself in some form or other with his fellow men, with the world outside. The experience of separateness, therefore, arouses anxiety. It is, Fromm states, the very source of all anxiety. Being separate means being cut off, without any capacity to use one's human powers. To be separate means to be helpless. Beyond that, this separateness arouses a profound sense of shame and guilt. A key historical detail that Fromm uses to illustrate this is his reinterpretation of the biblical story of Adam and Eve. After Adam and Eve have eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, after they have disobeyed, and in doing so, have become fully human by emancipating themselves from the original animal harmony with nature, they saw that they were naked and they were ashamed. Fromm cautions us not to interpret this with the prudish morals of the 19th century, as if the important point was the embarrassment that their genitals were visible. Here, Fromm offers a much deeper, less common psychological detail. The main point of the story, he argues, is this: after man and woman have become aware of themselves and of each other, they are aware of their separateness and of their difference, inasmuch as they belong to different sexes. But in recognizing their separateness, they remain strangers. Why? Because they have not yet learned to love each other. This is made clear by the fact that Adam's first impulse is to defend himself by blaming Eve, rather than by trying to defend her. This awareness of human separation, without the reunion by love, is the true source of shame. It is, at the same time, the source of guilt and anxiety. The deepest need of man, then, is the need to overcome his separateness, to leave the prison of his aloneness. The absolute failure to achieve this aim means insanity. The panic of complete isolation can only be overcome by such a radical withdrawal from the world outside that the feeling of separation itself disappears, because the world outside, from which one is separated, has disappeared. Therefore, man of all ages and all cultures is confronted with the solution of one and the same question: the question of how to overcome separateness, how to achieve union, how to transcend one's own individual life and find at-one-ment. The question is the same for the cave dweller, the nomad, the medieval monk, and the modern office worker. It springs from the unchangeable conditions of human existence. The answer, however, varies. This question can be answered by animal worship, by human sacrifice, by military conquest, by indulgence in luxury, by ascetic renunciation, by obsessional work, by artistic creation, by the love of God, and by the love of man. The history of religion and philosophy is the history of these answers. But while there are many answers, they are not innumerable. And Fromm argues that most of these are, at best, only partial solutions. They are failed escapes from the prison of separateness. To solve the unbearable problem of separateness, the prison of aloneness, man attempts many paths, yet most of these, Fromm argues, are only partial answers or failed escapes. One of the earliest and most dramatic solutions lies in all kinds of orgiastic states. These can take the form of an auto-induced trance, sometimes achieved with the help of drugs. Here, Fromm points to a key historical detail: the rituals of many primitive tribes. In a transitory state of exaltation, the world outside, and with it the feeling of separateness from it, disappears. Because these rituals are practiced in common, an experience of fusion with the group is added, which makes the solution all the more effective. Closely related to this is the sexual experience. The sexual orgasm can produce a state similar to a trance, and communal sexual orgies were part of many primitive rituals. After this experience, man can go on for a time without suffering so much from his separateness, until the tension of anxiety slowly mounts and is reduced again by the repeated performance of the ritual. As long as these orgiastic states are a common practice, they do not produce anxiety or guilt. They are a socially patterned solution, but it is entirely different when this same solution is chosen by an individual in a culture that has left these practices behind. In our non-orgiastic culture, these solutions become individualized in the forms of alcoholism and drug addiction. Unlike the tribesmen, these individuals suffer from intense guilt and remorse. They try to escape separateness, but after the experience is over, they feel all the more separate and are thus driven to repeat the act with increasing frequency and intensity. Fromm saw a similar dynamic in the desperate search for the sexual orgasm when it is divorced from love. It becomes a desperate attempt to escape the anxiety of separateness, but it never bridges the gap between two human beings, except momentarily. All orgiastic solutions, Fromm concludes, have three characteristics. They are intense, even violent. They occur in the total personality, mind and body, and crucially, they are transitory and periodical. Exactly the opposite holds true for the form of union that is by far the most frequent solution in the modern world: union by conformity. This is the solution that the marketing character from To Have or To Be embraces. It is a union based on conforming with the group, its customs, practices, and beliefs. This solution has also evolved. In a primitive society, the group was small. With the development of culture, the group enlarged. It became the citizenry of a polis, or a large state. A key historical fact is that even the poor Roman felt pride because he could say, civis Romanus sum. Rome was his family, his home, his world. In contemporary Western society, this union with the group is the prevalent way of overcoming separateness. It is a union in which the individual self largely disappears, and the aim is simply to belong to the herd. If I am like everybody else, if I have no feelings or thoughts that make me different, if I conform in custom, dress, and ideas, I am saved from the frightening experience of aloneness. Dictatorial systems use terror to induce this conformity. Democratic countries use suggestion and propaganda. But Fromm insists that democratic societies show an overwhelming degree of conformity nonetheless. The reason is simple. There has to be an answer to the quest for union. And if there is no better way, then herd conformity becomes the predominant one. Most people, Fromm notes, are not even aware of their need to conform. They live under the illusion that they are individualists, that they follow their own inclinations, and that it just happens that their ideas are the same as the majority's. This consensus serves as proof for the correctness of their ideas. The need for some individuality is then satisfied with minor differences: the initials on a handbag, the nameplate of a bank teller, belonging to the Elks instead of the Shriners. Here, Fromm introduces a rarely discussed detail: the perversion of the idea of equality. This increasing elimination of differences is, for him, closely related to the modern concept of equality. In a religious context, equality had meant that we are all God's children, that we are all one. In the Western Enlightenment, as formulated by Kant, it meant that no man must be the means for the ends of another man. It was a condition for the development of individuality. But in contemporary capitalistic society, this meaning has been transformed. By equality, one now refers to the equality of automatons, of men who have lost their individuality. Equality today means sameness, rather than oneness. It is the sameness of abstractions, of men who read the same newspapers and have the same feelings. Fromm even applies this critique to the equality of women. While not speaking against it, he warns that it is part of this trend. Equality is bought at this price. Women are equal because they are not different anymore. The polarity of the sexes is disappearing, and with it, erotic love, which is based on this polarity. Union by conformity is calm and dictated by routine. But for this very reason, it is often insufficient to pacify the anxiety of separateness. The high incidence of alcoholism, drug addiction, and compulsive sexualism are symptoms of its relative failure. This solution is further supported by the routine of modern life. Man becomes a 9-to-5er, a part of the bureaucratic force. His tasks are prescribed. Even his feelings are prescribed cheerfulness, tolerance, reliability, and an ability to get along without friction. Fun is also routinized book clubs, movies, television sessions. How can a man caught in this net not forget that he is a unique individual, with a longing for love and a dread of separateness? Even creative work, a third way of attaining union, fails in this context. In true productive work, like that of an artisan, the worker and his object become one. But in the modern work process of the clerk or the worker on the endless belt, little is left of this uniting quality. The worker becomes an appendix to the machine. The unity achieved in orgiastic fusion is transitory. The unity achieved by conformity is only pseudo-unity. They are only partial answers. The full answer, Fromm insists, must lie in the achievement of interpersonal union, of fusion with another person. This is the most powerful striving in man. But this, too, is fraught with peril. For there are immature forms of interpersonal fusion that are just as much a failed escape as conformity. These forms, which are often mistaken for love, Fromm calls symbiotic union. The desire for interpersonal fusion is the most powerful striving in man. It is the force that keeps the human race together. But not all forms of fusion are love. After failing to find lasting union in transitory orgiastic states or in the sterile pseudo-unity of herd conformity, callback from section 3, man's quest for at-one-ment leads him to interpersonal relationships. But here, too, he encounters immature forms, desperate solutions that are often mistaken for love, but are, in fact, a form of possession. Erich Fromm calls this symbiotic union. To explain this concept, Fromm uses a powerful biological pattern as an analogy, the relationship between the pregnant mother and the fetus. They are two, and yet they are one. They live together, symbiosis, and they need each other. The fetus is part of the mother and receives everything it needs from her. She is its entire world, feeding and protecting it. In the psychic symbiotic union, the two bodies are independent, but the psychological attachment is of the same kind. It is a fusion where two people depend on each other, but it is a fusion without integrity. This union takes two forms, a passive one and an active one. The passive form of symbiotic union is submission, or what Fromm, using a clinical term, calls masochism. The masochistic person escapes from the unbearable feeling of isolation and separateness, callback from section 2, by making himself part and parcel of another person. He allows the other person to direct him, guide him, and protect him, to be his life and his oxygen, as it were. The power of the one to whom he submits, be it a person or a god, is inflated. He is everything. The masochist feels, I am nothing, except inasmuch as I am part of him. By becoming a part, he feels he is part of greatness, power, and certainty. This person does not have to make decisions, does not have to take any risks, and is never alone. But the price is his self. He is not independent. He has no integrity. In Fromm's words, he is not yet fully born. This mechanism, in a secular context, is identical to idolatry. The masochistic person projects all his strength, power, and worth onto the loved one, worshiping them as a goddess of love or a perfect being. This is the root of what Fromm, in his later work, would call idolatrous love. The person is alienated from his own powers and projects them into the loved person, who is worshipped as the bearer of all bliss. In this process, the worshipper deprives himself of all sense of strength and loses himself in the loved one instead of finding himself. This is not love, it is possession by submission. The active form of symbiotic fusion is domination, or its psychological equivalent, sadism. The sadistic person wants to escape from his own aloneness and his own sense of imprisonment by making another person part and parcel of himself. He inflates and enhances himself by incorporating another person, who in turn worships him. He commands, exploits, hurts, and humiliates the other. But here is the central psychological trap. The sadistic person is as dependent on the submissive person as the latter is on the former. Neither can live without the other. While in a realistic sense, their roles are very different, in a deeper emotional sense, they are locked in the same pathological bond fusion without integrity. Fromm points out that it's not surprising to find that a person usually reacts in both the sadistic and masochistic manner, often toward different objects. A key historical example Fromm provides is his analysis of Adolf Hitler. Fromm, who fled Germany in the 1930s and wrote Escape from Freedom to explain the psychological appeal of fascism, saw Hitler as a prime case of this sadomasochistic dynamic. Hitler, he argued, reacted primarily in a sadistic fashion toward the German people, whom he loved to dominate, and his enemies whom he wished to destroy. But he reacted masochistically toward fate, history, and the higher power of nature. His very end, a suicide staged amidst the total destruction of his nation, was as characteristic of this death-bound psychology as his dream of total, godlike domination. But Fromm offers another, less common detail about the sadistic impulse, connecting it to a perverted quest for knowledge. He argues there is a desperate way to know the secret of man through complete power over another person, the power to make him do, feel, and think what one wants. The ultimate degree of this is sadism, the desire to make a human being suffer, to torture him, to force him to betray his secret in his suffering. This craving to penetrate man's secret is, for Fromm, an essential motivation for the depth and intensity of cruelty. It is a desperate path to knowledge, but it always fails. The sadist can tear the other being apart, limb from limb, but all he has done is to destroy him. He remains as ignorant as he was before. This symbiotic union, in both its active and passive forms, is a profound and profoundly common distortion of the need to fuse. It is an attempt to solve the problem of separateness that, instead of creating life, either stagnates or destroys it. It is the very definition of possession. In stark contrast to this, Fromm argues, stands mature love, which he defines not as a passive feeling or a desperate fusion, but as an active power. Section 5. In direct contrast to the passive, possessive, and ultimately destructive nature of symbiotic union callback from Section 4, Erich Fromm defines the mature answer to the problem of existence. This is mature love. He defines it as union under the condition of preserving one's integrity, one's individuality. This is the central paradox of love in love. Two beings become one and yet remain two. This is the opposite of the sadomasochistic fusion, which destroys the integrity of both people. How is this paradox possible? It is possible because, for Fromm, love is an activity. It is not a passive affect, not a feeling that one falls into callback from section 1, but rather a standing in. This very word, activity, is one of the most ambiguous in modern language, and Fromm insists on redefining it. In the modern usage, activity means an action which brings about a change in an existing situation by means of an expenditure of energy. A man is considered active if he does business, studies medicine, works on an endless belt, or is engaged in sports. But Fromm argues that this is, in reality, a passivity. The person is not the actor, but the sufferer. He is the slave of a passion driven by a deep sense of insecurity, loneliness, ambition, or greed for money. His busyness callback from section 3 is a compulsion, not an expression of freedom. To explain true activity, Fromm draws on a philosopher who profoundly shaped his thought, a rarely discussed detail of his intellectual lineage, Baruch Spinoza. In his Ethics, Spinoza differentiated between active affects, actions, and passive affects, passions. In the exercise of an active affect, man is free. He is the master of his emotion. But in a passive affect, such as envy, jealousy, or any kind of greed, man is driven, the object of motivations he is not aware of. For Spinoza, love is not a passion. It is an action, the practice of a human power, which can be practiced only in freedom and never as the result of a compulsion. In this view, a man sitting quiet and contemplating, with no purpose except to experience himself and his oneness with the world, is not passive. In reality, Fromm states, this attitude of concentrated meditation is the highest activity there is, an activity of the soul. Love, as this kind of inner activity, can be described in one primary way. Love is primarily giving, not receiving. This, too, is a word that Fromm must rescue from its modern distortion. The most widespread misunderstanding is that giving means giving up something, being deprived, or sacrificing. This is the definition of giving used by the non-productive character orientations. The person who has not developed beyond the receptive or hoarding orientation experiences giving as an impoverishment. The marketing character callback from section 1 is willing to give, but only in exchange for receiving. Giving without receiving for him is being cheated. For the productive character, giving has an entirely different meaning. Giving is the highest expression of potency. In the very act of giving, I experience my strength, my wealth, my power. This experience of heightened vitality and potency fills the giver with joy. Giving is more joyous than receiving, not because it is a deprivation, but because in the act of giving lies the expression of my aliveness. Fromm uses the sphere of sex as his most elementary example. The culmination of the male sexual function lies in the act of giving. He gives himself, his sexual organ, and at the moment of orgasm, he gives his semen. He cannot help giving it if he is potent. If he cannot give, he is impotent. The woman, Fromm argues, gives herself too. She opens the gates to her feminine center. In the act of receiving, she gives. If she is incapable of this act of giving, if she can only receive or take, she is frigid. She gives again as a mother, giving her milk to the infant and her bodily warmth. Not to give would be painful. In the sphere of material things, not he who has much is rich, but he who gives much. The hoarder, anxiously worried about losing something, is psychologically speaking the poor, impoverished man, regardless of how much he has. But the most important sphere of giving is not material. It lies in the specifically human realm. What does one person give to another? He gives of himself, of the most precious he has. He gives of his life. This does not mean he sacrifices his life for the other. It means he gives him of that which is alive in him. He gives him of his joy, of his interest, of his understanding, of his knowledge, of his humor, of his sadness, of all expressions and manifestations of that which is alive in him. In thus giving of his life, he enriches the other person. He does not give in order to receive. Giving is in itself exquisite joy. But in the act of truly giving, he cannot help bringing something to life in the other person, and this which is brought to life reflects back to him. Giving implies making the other person a giver also, and they both share in the joy of what they have brought to life. Love, therefore, is a power which produces love. As a key historical fact, Fromm notes that this very thought was beautifully expressed by Marx. In his economic and philosophical manuscripts of 1844, Karl Marx wrote, "Assume man as man, and his relation to the world as a human one, and you can exchange love only for love, confidence for confidence, etc." Marx concluded, "If you love without calling forth love, that is, if your love as such does not produce love, then your love is impotent, a misfortune." Impotence, in this context, is the inability to produce love. This ability to love, to give, is not a mysterious gift. It is the direct result of character development. It presupposes the attainment of a predominantly productive orientation. In this orientation, the person has overcome dependency, narcissistic omnipotence, and the wish to exploit others or to hoard, callback from Section 4. He has acquired faith in his own human powers and the courage to rely on them. To the degree that these qualities are lacking, he is afraid of giving himself, and therefore, he is afraid of loving. But giving is only the first component of this active power. Fromm states that the active character of love always implies 4 other basic elements. Common to all forms of love, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Love, as an active power and an act of giving callback from Section 5, is not a vague or abstract sentiment for Erich Fromm. It is a practice, and like any art, it is built upon specific, foundational elements. Beyond the primary act of giving, Fromm states that the active character of love always implies 4 basic components, common to all forms of mature love. These are care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. The first of these, care, is the most evident. That love implies care is most obvious. Fromm notes, in a mother's love for her child, no assurance of her love would strike us as sincere if we saw her lacking in care for the infant, if she neglected to feed it, to bathe it, or to give it physical comfort. We are impressed by her love because we see her caring for the child. This applies to all objects of love. If a person told us they loved flowers, yet we saw that they consistently forgot to water them, we would not believe in their love. Care is not an optional extra, it is the fundamental proof of the act. Fromm defines it simply: love is the active concern for the life and the growth of that which we love. Where this active concern is lacking, there is no love. As a key historical fact, or rather, A foundational narrative illustrating this point, Fromm retrieves the biblical story of Jonah. God tells Jonah to go to Nineveh to warn its inhabitants, but Jonah flees, as he is afraid the people will repent and that God will forgive them. Jonah is a man with a strong sense of law and order, but, in Fromm's analysis, he is without love. After God saves him from the whale, a symbol of the isolation his own lack of solidarity has brought upon him, Jonah preaches in Nineveh. The people repent, and God forgives them, just as Jonah feared. Jonah is intensely angry, wanting justice, not mercy. He then finds comfort in the shade of a tree, which God makes grow for him. But when God makes the tree wilt, Jonah angrily complains. God's answer is the entire point. Thou hast had pity on the gourd. God says, For the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow. And should I not spare Nineveh, that great city? God's answer explains to Jonah that the essence of love is to labor for something and to make something grow. Love and labor, Fromm concludes, are inseparable. One loves that for which one labors, and one labors for that which one loves. Care and concern imply the second element, responsibility. Today, Fromm argues, this word is often misunderstood to mean a duty, something imposed upon one from the outside. But in its true sense, responsibility is an entirely voluntary act. Here, Fromm reveals a rarely discussed etymological detail. Responsibility means to be able and ready to respond, responder. Jonah, like Cain, did not feel responsible. He could ask, Am I my brother's keeper? The loving person responds, The life of his brother is not his brother's business alone, but his own. This responsibility refers to the psychic needs of other adults, just as it refers to the physical needs of an infant. But this is where a great danger enters, a danger that leads directly back to the idea of possession callback from Section 4. Responsibility could easily deteriorate into domination and possessiveness, were it not for the third component of love, respect. Respect is not fear or awe. Fromm once again draws on the word's origin. Respect comes from respicere, to look at. It therefore denotes the ability to see a person as he is, to be aware of his unique individuality. Respect is the concern that the other person should grow and unfold as he is. This is the absolute opposite of possession. Respect implies the absence of exploitation. I want the loved person to grow and unfold for his own sake, in his own way, and not for the purpose of serving me. If I love the other, I feel one with him, but with him as he is, not as I need him to be as an object for my use. This, Fromm stresses, is only possible if I have achieved independence. If I can stand and walk without needing crutches, that is, without the sadomasochistic, symbiotic need to dominate or exploit anyone else. Callback from Section 4. Respect exists only on the basis of freedom. As an old French song says, L'amour est l'enfant de la liberté. Love is the child of freedom, never that of domination. Finally, to respect a person is not possible without knowledge. Care and responsibility would be blind if they were not guided by knowledge. But this knowledge, like the other elements, is not the superficial knowledge of the marketing character. Callback from Section 3. It is not knowledge that stays at the periphery. It penetrates to the core. It is only possible when I can transcend the concern for myself and see the other person in his own terms. I may know, for instance, that a person is angry. But if I penetrate to the core, I may know that he is anxious, worried, lonely, or feels guilty. I then know his anger is only a manifestation, and I see him as a suffering person rather than just an angry one. This brings Fromm back to the secret of man, the fundamental problem of separateness, callback from section 2. The need to fuse with another person is closely related to the desire to know this secret. We know ourselves, and yet we do not. We know our fellow man, and yet we do not, because we are not a thing, and our fellow man is not a thing. The further we reach into the depth of a being, the more the goal of knowledge eludes us. He then revisits the failed path of sadism callback from section 4. There is that desperate way to know the secret complete power, the power that transforms him into a thing, our possession. The ultimate degree of this is sadism, the desire to make a human being suffer, to torture him, to force his secret out of him. This, Fromm insists, is the dark motivation for cruelty. But the sadist fails. He can destroy the other being, but he remains as ignorant as he was before. The other path to knowing the secret is love. Love is active penetration of the other person, in which my desire to know is stilled by union. In the act of fusion, I know you. I know myself. I know everybody, and I know nothing, in the sense of possessing factual data. I know in the only way that which is alive can be known by the experience of union, not by any knowledge our thought can give. Love is the only way of knowledge that, in the act of union, answers our quest, in the act of loving, of giving myself, of penetrating the other. I find myself. I discover myself. I discover us both. I discover man. This is the ultimate fulfillment of the Delphic motto, know thyself. The only way of full knowledge lies in the act of love. We have established, then, that love is an active power, an art that must be learned. We have seen that it is not a passive feeling, but an active giving, an expression of one's own aliveness and potency. This active art is built on 4 essential pillars: care, the labor for what we love; responsibility, the voluntary readiness to respond to another's needs; respect, the ability to see a person as they are and wish for them to grow for their own sake, not for ours; and knowledge, the deep, active penetration of another's reality that is only possible through the union of love. We have also seen the failed, pathological forms of fusion that are so often mistaken for love, the desperate, transitory escapes of orgiastic states, the pseudo-unity of herd conformity, and the possessive, sadomasochistic trap of symbiotic union. This raises the most fundamental question of all: why do we fail so regularly at this art? Why do we so often choose the path of possession over the path of love? For Erich Fromm, the answer is not simply a matter of individual neurosis. These failures are symptoms of a much deeper orientation, a social character that our entire culture fosters and reinforces. To understand why mature love is so rare, we must first understand the 2 fundamental modes of existence that Fromm, in his later work, identified as the central conflict of modern man. He called this the choice between the mode of having and the mode of being. The having mode is an orientation in which one's entire relationship to the world is one of possessing, owning, and controlling. It is the logic of the market, the character structure of a capitalist society where all things, and even people, are transformed into commodities. In this mode, One's identity is defined by what one has. My sense of self is not rooted in my own activity, but in my property, my credentials, my status, and even the people I have in my life. The being mode, in contrast, is an orientation based on aliveness, on productive activity, and on genuine relatedness. This is the activity in the Spinozist sense callback from section 5, where I am what I do, not in the sense of busyness, but in the sense of productively using my human powers. This distinction, Fromm argues, is the absolute root of the problem of love. All the failed forms of love are, in fact, manifestations of the having mode. Symbiotic union is about having another person, either by swallowing them, sadism, or by being swallowed, masochism. The modern idea of falling in love is part of the marketing character, a transaction to acquire the best object available on the market. Idolatrous love is about projecting all of one's own power into another, idolizing them as a thing to be worshipped, and in doing so, losing oneself. In every case, the other person is not related to, but possessed. They are turned from a thou into an it. Mature love, by its very definition, can only exist in the being mode. Its core components, giving, care, respect, and knowledge, are all activities of the soul. They cannot be had as possessions. You cannot have respect. You can only be respectful. You cannot have knowledge of a person. You can only be in a state of knowing, which is a continuous, active process of penetration and union. As a key historical fact, Fromm stressed that he did not invent this distinction. He was merely giving a modern psychological voice to a truth recognized by all the great masters of living. The Buddha, he notes, taught that in order to reach the highest stage of human development, we must not crave possessions. Jesus taught, "For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" But a rarely discussed detail of Fromm's intellectual life, and one of his deepest inspirations for this concept, was the 14th century German mystic, Meister Eckhart. Fromm was profoundly influenced by Eckhart, quoting him in both To Have or To Be and The Art of Loving. It was Eckhart who taught that having nothing and making oneself open and empty is the condition for achieving spiritual wealth and strength. This idea that poverty, in the sense of non-possession and non-attachment, is the necessary condition for true aliveness and spiritual being is the very core of Fromm's argument. This is why the having mode makes love impossible. If my character orientation is one of having, then my fundamental emotion is anxiety. I am constantly afraid of losing what I have. The hoarder, Fromm writes, is, psychologically speaking, the poor, impoverished man, regardless of how much he has. This person cannot practice the art of loving, because its first principle is giving. For the having character, giving is experienced as an impoverishment. It is a sacrifice, a loss, a deprivation. But for the being character, giving is the highest expression of potency. It is not a loss, but an expression of my aliveness. The fatal error of the having mode is that it reifies everything. It turns living processes into dead things. Just as a person in this mode says, "I have a problem," they also believe they can, "I have love." But, Fromm insists, there is no such thing as love. There is only the act of loving. Love is not a thing you can acquire or possess. It is an activity, a power of the soul. This is the same fallacy that distinguishes falling in love, a one-time event of acquisition, from standing in love, a continuous, active state of being. To truly understand this profound difference in orientation, Fromm gives us a perfect and simple illustration, comparing the reactions of two poets to a single flower. To understand the having mode, the orientation that defines our modern crisis and makes love an impossibility, Erich Fromm provided a powerful illustration, comparing the reactions of two poets to the same experience seeing a flower on a walk. The first poet, the 19th century English laureate Tennyson, wrote "Flower in the crannied wall. I pluck you out of the crannies. I hold you here, root and all, in my hand. If I could understand what you are, I should know what God and man is." In this short verse, Fromm found the perfect tragic epitome of the Western having orientation. Faced with the beauty and mystery of a living thing, Tennyson's immediate reaction is one of possession. He is not content to contemplate or relate. He must act. He plucks the flower. He holds it. His connection to the flower requires its physical appropriation. Even his higher philosophical motive, the desire to understand, is a form of possession. It is the cold, intellectual knowledge that Fromm contrasted with the true knowledge of love. Call back from section 6. Tennyson wants to dissect the flower, to break it down, to know it in the way a scientist seeks truth by dissecting life. And what is the immediate, unavoidable consequence of this having impulse? The flower is killed. This, Fromm argues, is the essence of the having mode. It is a relationship to the world defined by possessing and owning, a relationship in which I want to make everybody and everything my property. This orientation is the characteristic of a society centered on things, not people. It is the logic that reduces every living thing to an it, an object to be controlled, managed, or acquired. A rarely discussed detail of Fromm's analysis reveals just how deep this orientation runs. He argued that the having mode has become so dominant that it has fundamentally infected the very tool we use to think our language. He pointed to the increasing use of nouns and the decreasing use of verbs in Western languages. Why does this grammatical shift matter? A noun, Fromm explains, is the proper designation for a thing. A verb is the proper designation for an activity or a process. The problem is that we increasingly express living activities in terms of having things. He gives a clear, alarming example. A person today does not say, "I am troubled," a process, a verb. Instead, they say, "I have a problem," a thing, a noun. This is not a harmless linguistic quirk. It is a profound act of alienation. The I of experience has been replaced by the it of possession. The person has transformed their living, subjective feeling into a static thing that they own, the problem. By turning a living process into a dead object, they have alienated themselves from their own experience. This linguistic alienation is the first step in understanding why our concept of love is so distorted. Once we are comfortable saying, "I have a problem," it is only a short step to believing that we can also, "I have love." Fromm is adamant that this phrase is meaningless. If we could have love, it would need to be a thing, a substance that one can possess. But, he insists, there is no such thing as love. There is only the act of loving. To love is a creative activity callback from section 5. By turning the act of loving a verb into love, a noun, We have turned it into an idol, a commodity, a thing to be possessed. This is precisely how the having mode manifests in our relationships. It is the orientation of the marketing character callback from Section 1, who sees partners as commodities and love as a fair bargain. This is the person who is incapable of the first principle of love-giving. For the having character, giving is experienced as an impoverishment, a deprivation, a sacrifice. The marketing character is willing to give, but only in exchange for receiving. Giving without receiving for him is being cheated. This is also the hoarding orientation, where the person clings to their possessions, their feelings, and their loved ones out of a deep-seated anxiety. This person, defined by the having mode, is the truly selfish person. But here, Fromm makes a crucial distinction. He argues that selfishness and self-love, far from being identical, are actually opposites. The selfish person, the person in the having mode, does not love himself too much but too little. In fact, he hates himself. This lack of fondness for his real self, an expression of his fundamental lack of productiveness, leaves him empty and frustrated. He is necessarily unhappy and anxiously concerned to snatch from life the satisfactions which he blocks himself from attaining. He seems to care too much for himself, but in reality, he is only making a desperate and unsuccessful attempt to cover up for his total failure to care for his real self. As a key historical fact, Fromm directly confronted the theories of Sigmund Freud on this point. Freud had equated self-love with narcissism, the turning of the libido, or life energy, back toward one's own ego. For Freud, love and self-love are thus mutually exclusive in the sense that the more there is of one, the less there is of the other. Fromm argues, this is the fundamental fallacy that has poisoned our understanding. The selfish person is not the one who loves himself too much. He is the one who cannot love at all, including himself. His narcissism is not an abundance of self-love, but a pathological substitute for it, rooted in the emptiness of the having mode. This orientation of having is the very definition of possession. It is the psychological framework that makes the sadomasochistic symbiotic union callback from Section 4 seem like a rational solution to the problem of separateness. It is the impulse that plucks the flower and, in the name of love, kills it. To find the path to true, mature love, we must first understand its complete opposite, the mode of being. In stark contrast to Tennyson's impulse to possess and kill the flower callback from Section 8, Erich Fromm presents the second poet, the 17th century Japanese haiku master, Basho. Faced with a similar sight, Basho wrote, "When I look carefully, I see the Nazuna blooming by the hedge." This, Fromm argues, is the perfect, simple expression of the mode of being. Basho's reaction is one of pure, active relatedness. He does not want to pluck the flower. He does not even touch it. All he does is look carefully in order to see it. He does not seek to understand it in the way Tennyson did, by dissecting it into a piece of intellectual property. He simply relates to it, connects with it, identifies with it, and crucially, lets it live. This is the essence of the being mode. It is an orientation not of possessing, but of experiencing. It is not about having the world, but about being in the world, alive and related to it. In this mode, one's identity is not defined by what one owns, but by what one does in the true, Spinozist sense of inner activity, callback from Section 5. Basho's looking carefully is not a passive act. It is a profound, concentrated inner activity of the soul, an act of productive meditation. This is the activity that Fromm identifies as the highest expression of human power, the creative use of our human powers. This is the only mode in which mature love can exist. Love, in the being mode, is not a thing to be had, a problem to be solved, or a commodity to be exchanged. Callback from Section 8. It is the act of loving, a continuous, creative activity. Its core components: giving, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge are not possessions. They are all activities of the being mode. You are giving, you are caring, you are respecting. The moment you believe you have love, it is gone, because the act has ceased. A rarely discussed detail that Fromm used to illustrate this distinction comes from a third poet, Goethe. In his poem Found, Goethe, like Tennyson, sees a small flower and has the same impulse to pluck it. But, Fromm notes, unlike Tennyson, Goethe is aware that this means killing the flower. He solves the problem in a way that stands between Tennyson and Basho. He digs the flower out with all its roots and carefully planted it again in his own garden at home. Here, the force of life is stronger than the force of mere intellectual curiosity. Goethe does possess the flower, but in a way that respects and preserves its life. It is a step away from the deadening having of Tennyson, and a step toward the pure being of Basho. To live in the being mode requires a fundamental shift in character. It requires what Fromm's inspiration, Meister Eckhart, called poverty, callback from Section 7. This is not material destitution, but a psychological state of non-attachment, of giving up one's egocentrism and selfishness. It is the state of being empty and open, which is the only condition for achieving spiritual wealth and strength. This is why the being mode is so rare, and why the having mode is so dominant. The having mode feels safe. The being mode is frightening. To live in being, Fromm says, requires independence, freedom, and the presence of critical reason. It requires giving up the crutch of property. Most people find this too difficult. It evokes their intense anxiety and feels like being thrown into the ocean when one cannot swim. They are imprisoned by the illusion that they cannot walk on their own feet, that they would collapse if not supported by the things they have. They do not know that if they were to give up the crutch, they would be able to begin to use their own proper forces and to walk on their own. This is the central precondition for love. Love is an act of the being mode. It cannot be hoarded, owned, or controlled. It can only be done. It can only be lived. But love is not a vague, universal abstraction. It is an orientation of character. But it expresses itself in different ways depending on the object. To understand the art of loving in practice, Fromm first breaks it down into its different forms, beginning with the most fundamental of all brotherly love. The being mode is the foundation for all mature love. But love, as an orientation of character, is not a single, uniform expression. Erich Fromm argues that it is an attitude that determines the relatedness of a person to the world as a whole, not just to one object. However, this single capacity manifests in different forms depending on the kind of object being loved. To understand the art of loving, we must first examine the most fundamental type of love, the one that underlies all others' brotherly love. Brotherly love is, simply, the sense of responsibility, care, respect, knowledge of any other human being, the wish to further his life. It is the love spoken of in the Bible's command, love thy neighbor as thyself. Its defining characteristic is its very lack of exclusiveness. If I have truly developed the capacity for love, then I cannot help loving my brothers. In brotherly love, one experiences a sense of union with all men, of human solidarity, of human at one-ment. It is based on the profound experience that we are all one. In this view, the differences in talent, intelligence, or knowledge are negligible in comparison with the identity of the human core common to all men. To experience this identity, Fromm states, one must penetrate from the periphery to the core. If I perceive in another person mainly their surface, their actions, opinions, or appearance, I perceive mainly the differences, that which separates us. But if I penetrate to their core, I perceive our identity, the fact of our brotherhood. This relatedness from center to center is what Fromm calls central relatedness. Brotherly love is love between equals, but, Fromm notes, its development has a specific starting point. To love one's own flesh and blood is no achievement. Even animals love their young. The child loves his parents because he needs them. True love, he argues, begins to unfold only in the love of those who do not serve a purpose. As a key historical fact, Fromm points out that, in the Old Testament, the central object of man's love is the poor, the stranger, the widow and the orphan, and eventually, the national enemy. The love for the helpless is the true beginning of brotherly love. By having compassion for the one who has nothing for me, the one I cannot possess or exchange, callback from Section 8, I begin to develop love for my brother. This form of love is universal. The second form, motherly love, is also universal in its scope, but it is, by its very nature, a relationship of inequality, where one needs all the help and the other gives it. Motherly love is unconditional affirmation of the child's life and his needs. But Fromm makes a crucial distinction here. This affirmation has two aspects. The first is the care and responsibility absolutely necessary for the preservation of the child's life and his growth. The second aspect goes further than mere preservation. It is the attitude which instills in the child a love for living, which gives him the feeling, it is good to be alive. To illustrate this, Fromm provides a rarely discussed detail, a beautiful reinterpretation of two biblical symbols. The first is the story of creation. God creates the world and man, which corresponds to the simple care and affirmation of existence. But God goes beyond this. On each day, he looks at his creation and says, "It is good." This second step, this "it is good," is what instills the love for life itself. The second symbol is the promised land, described as flowing with milk and honey. Milk, Fromm says, is the symbol of the first aspect of love, that of care and affirmation. Honey, in contrast, symbolizes the sweetness of life, the love for it, and the happiness in being alive. Most mothers, Fromm argues, are capable of giving milk, but only a minority are capable of giving honey. To be able to give honey, a mother must not only be a good mother, but a happy person, one who is firmly rooted in her own being, callback from Section 9, and not in a state of anxious having. Motherly love is often considered the highest, most sacred bond because it is so altruistic. But Fromm argues that the real achievement of motherly love lies not in the mother's love for the small infant, but in her love for the growing child. The vast majority of mothers are loving as long as the infant is small and still completely dependent on them. This, Fromm notes, can be rooted in several motives, not all of which are love. It can be a satisfaction of her narcissism, as the infant is still felt to be a part of herself, or it can be a satisfaction of her wish for power or possession, as the helpless child is a natural object for a domineering and possessive woman. This is a form of symbiotic union callback from Section 4, but the child must grow. It must emerge from mother's womb, from mother's breast, to become a completely separate human being. This is the great test. The very essence of motherly love is to care for the child's growth, and that means to want the child's separation from herself. Here, Fromm presents a profound paradox. In erotic love, two people who were separate become one. In motherly love, two people who were one become separate. The mother must not only tolerate this separation, she must wish and support it. This is the stage where many mothers fail. The narcissistic, domineering, possessive woman, the woman in the having mode, cannot let go. Only the truly loving woman, the woman who is happier in giving than in taking, who is firmly rooted in her own existence, can be a loving mother during this process of separation. The ultimate test of motherly love is the willingness to bear separation, and even after the separation, to go on loving. These two forms of love, brotherly and motherly, are universal. In contrast to both is the third form, the one most often confused with love itself, erotic love. In contrast to the universal nature of brotherly love and the unequal, nurturing bond of motherly love, callback from Section 10, Erich Fromm analyzes the third and most celebrated form, erotic love. He defines it as the craving for complete fusion, for union with one other person. By its very nature, it is exclusive, not universal. But Fromm immediately issues a warning. It is perhaps the most deceptive form of love there is. Why is it so deceptive? First, it is almost universally confused with the explosive, passive experience of falling in love. We mistake the sudden collapse of the barriers between two strangers for the peak of love itself. As we explored in the context of human separateness, callback from Section 2. This miracle of sudden intimacy is one of the most exhilarating experiences in life, especially for those who have been isolated. But Fromm argues that this experience, by its very nature, is short-lived. Once the stranger has become an intimately known person, there are no more barriers to overcome, no more sudden closeness to achieve. The intimacy loses its miraculous character. People then make a fatal error. They take the intensity of the infatuation, this being crazy about each other, for proof of the intensity of their love, while it may only prove the degree of their preceding loneliness. This illusion of union is greatly helped by the second deceptive factor, sexual desire. Sexual desire absolutely aims at fusion, but Fromm points out that it can be stimulated by the anxiety of aloneness, by the wish to conquer or be conquered, by vanity, by the wish to hurt and even to destroy, as much as it can be stimulated by love. Because sexual desire is so closely coupled with the idea of love in most people's minds, they are easily misled to conclude that they love each other when they want each other physically. But sexual attraction, when it is not part of mature love, creates, for the moment, the illusion of union. Without love, this union leaves the two strangers just as far apart as they were before. This is the having mode of possession callback from Section 8, not the being mode of union. The third deception lies in the misinterpretation of its exclusiveness. True erotic love is exclusive, but this is often distorted into a possessive attachment. We often find two people in love who feel no love for anybody else. Fromm delivers a devastating diagnosis for this. It is an egotisme à deux, an egotism for two. They are two people who identify themselves with each other and who solve the problem of separateness by enlarging the single individual into two. But because they remain separated from the rest of mankind, their experience of union is an illusion. True erotic love, Fromm insists, must be built upon brotherly love, callback from Section 10. It is exclusive only in the sense that one can fuse fully and intensely with one person only, but in that one person, the lover loves in the other person all of mankind, all that is alive. This leads Fromm to the central paradox of mature erotic love. It has one premise, that I love from the essence of my being and experience the other person in the essence of his or her being. In essence, all human beings are identical. We are all part of one. This leads to a radical conclusion if we are all one in our essence. It should not make any difference whom we love. This, Fromm notes, is a key historical fact that our modern world forgets. This idea that love is not a spontaneous preference but a conscious commitment is indeed the rationale behind the idea of the insolubility of marriage. It is the foundation for the many forms of traditional marriage in which the two partners never choose each other, but are chosen for each other and yet are expected to love each other. Love, in this view, is essentially an act of will, of decision, to commit my life completely to that of one other person. Contemporary Western culture finds this idea completely false. We believe love must be the outcome of a spontaneous, emotional reaction, an irresistible feeling. But Fromm powerfully refutes this spontaneous view, identifying it as the core of the falling in love fallacy. He writes, "If love were only a feeling, there would be no basis for the promise to love each other forever. A feeling comes, and it may go. How can I judge that it will stay forever? When my act does not involve judgment and decision." Mature love is not just a feeling. It is a decision. It is a judgment. It is a promise. But Fromm, in a rare and subtle clarification, does not simply discard the modern view in favor of the traditional one. He does not claim that only will matters. Instead, he resolves this with a paradox. We are all one, yet every one of us is a unique, unduplicable entity. This is the key. Inasmuch as we are all one, we can love everybody in the same way in the sense of brotherly love. But inasmuch as we are all also different, erotic love requires certain specific, highly individual elements which exist between some people, but not between all. Therefore, both views are simultaneously true. The idea that a relationship can be easily dissolved is just as erroneous as the idea that it must never be dissolved. Mature erotic love is a synthesis. It is a decision and a commitment, an act of will, of being. But it is one that is directed toward a unique individual with whom we share a specific, profound affinity. This active, committed love must, however, be based on a foundation of brotherly love, which in turn must be based on the most misunderstood love of all self-love. Love, as Erich Fromm defines it, is an attitude, an orientation of character that refers to the world as a whole, not just to one object. If a person loves only one other person and is indifferent to the rest of his fellow men, his love is not love, but a symbiotic attachment or an enlarged egotism. Love, in principle, is indivisible. Brotherly love is the foundation for all love. Motherly love is the unconditional affirmation of life and separation. And erotic love is the willed commitment to fuse completely with one unique individual. But this leads to the fourth and most controversial object of love, self-love. While applying the concept of love to various objects raises no objection, there is a widespread belief in Western thought that while it is virtuous to love others, it is sinful to love oneself. It is assumed that to the degree to which I love myself, I do not love others, that self-love is the very same thing as selfishness. A key historical fact is how deeply this belief is embedded. The religious reformer John Calvin, a foundational figure in Protestant thought, spoke of self-love as a pest. And, perhaps more surprisingly, Sigmund Freud shared this same value judgment, though he framed it in psychiatric terms. For Freud, self-love was identical with narcissism, the turning of the libido, or life energy, back toward one's own ego. He saw this as a hydraulic system. The libido is either turned toward others, which is love, or it is turned toward oneself, which is self-love. Therefore, love and self-love are mutually exclusive. The more there is of one, the less there is of the other. If self-love is bad, it follows that unselfishness must be a virtue. But Fromm argues that this is a fundamental logical fallacy, the very biblical commandment. Love thy neighbor as thyself implies that respect for one's own integrity and uniqueness, love for and understanding of one's own self cannot be separated from the respect, love, and understanding for another individual. The love for my own self is inseparably connected with the love for any other being. From this, Fromm builds his core psychological premise: our attitudes toward others and our attitudes toward ourselves, far from being contradictory, are basically conjunctive. They are not alternatives. Genuine love is an expression of productiveness and implies care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Call back from Section 6. It is not a passive affect, but an active striving for the growth and happiness of the loved person, rooted in one's own capacity to love. If this is true, then my own self must be as much an object of my love as another person. If an individual is able to love productively, Fromm writes, he loves himself too. If he can love only others, he cannot love at all. So, how do we explain selfishness? The selfish person is interested only in himself, wants everything for himself, feels no pleasure in giving, but only in taking. He lacks interest in the needs of others and respect for their dignity. Doesn't this prove that concern for others and concern for oneself are unavoidable alternatives? This would be true only if selfishness and self-love were identical. But that assumption, Fromm states, is the very fallacy which has led to so many mistaken conclusions. In his central thesis on the matter, he declares, selfishness and self-love, far from being identical, are actually opposites. The selfish person does not love himself too much but too little. In fact, he hates himself. This lack of fondness and care for himself, which is only one expression of his lack of productiveness, leaves him empty and frustrated. He is necessarily unhappy and anxiously concerned to snatch from life the satisfactions which he blocks himself from attaining. He seems to care too much for himself, but actually he only makes an unsuccessful attempt to cover up and compensate for his failure to care for his real self. To clarify this, Fromm introduces a rare clinical detail, the phenomenon of the neurotic, unselfish person. This is a symptom found in many people who are troubled by depression, tiredness, or an inability to work. This unselfishness is often the one redeeming character trait on which such people pride themselves. The unselfish person does not want anything for himself. He lives only for others. Yet he is puzzled to find that, in spite of his unselfishness, he is unhappy, and that his relationships to those closest to him are unsatisfactory. Psychoanalytic work reveals that this unselfishness is a symptom, showing that he is paralyzed in his capacity to love or to enjoy anything, and that, behind the facade of unselfishness, a subtle but not less intense self-centeredness is hidden. The unselfish mother is the most common example. She consciously believes that her unselfishness will teach her children what it means to be loved. The effect, however, is the opposite. The children do not show the happiness of persons who are convinced that they are loved. They are anxious, tense, afraid of the mother's disapproval, and anxious to live up to her expectations. They are affected by their mother's hidden hostility toward life. The effect of the unselfish mother is often worse than that of the selfish one, because the mother's unselfishness prevents the children from criticizing her. They are put under the obligation not to disappoint her. They are taught, under the mask of virtue, dislike for life. This leads to Fromm's powerful conclusion. There is nothing more conducive to giving a child the experience of what love, joy, and happiness are than being loved by a mother who loves herself. This grounds love for all objects, for our brothers, our children, our partners, and ourselves in a single, productive capacity. This capacity, this orientation toward all of life, finds its highest, most abstract expression in the fifth and final object of love, the love of God. The analysis of self-love brings us to a critical conclusion. The capacity to love, to be a productive, giving character who can love their neighbor, their children, their partner, and themselves, is not an isolated psychological achievement. It is, as Erich Fromm argues, profoundly dependent on the influence that a given culture has on the character of the average person. This forces us to ask the most pressing question: is the social structure of contemporary Western civilization, and the spirit resulting from it, conducive to the development of love? To raise the question, Fromm states, is to answer it in the negative. No objective observer of our Western life can doubt that love, brotherly love, motherly love, and erotic love is a relatively rare phenomenon. In its place, we find a number of forms of pseudo-love, which are in reality so many forms of the disintegration of love. To understand this disintegration, we must understand the social character that our society produces. This is the character orientation that Fromm, in his later work, would famously call the marketing character, callback from section 1 and 8. Capitalistic society, Fromm explains, is based on the principle of the market as the regulator of all social relations. Human energy and skill are transformed into commodities, exchanged on the labor market. This economic structure is reflected in a hierarchy of values. Amassed things, that which is dead, are of superior value to labor, to human powers, to that which is alive. This is the very definition of the having mode over the being mode, callback from section 7. As this system has evolved, capital has become increasingly centralized, and the individual has become increasingly dependent on a managerial bureaucracy that runs the great economic empires. This structure requires a specific kind of person. Modern capitalism needs men who cooperate smoothly and in large numbers, who want to consume more and more, and whose tastes are standardized and can be easily influenced. It needs men who feel free and independent, not subject to any authority, yet willing to be commanded, to do what is expected of them, to fit into the social machine without friction. The outcome is the modern marketing character, a man alienated from himself, from his fellow men, and from nature. He has been transformed into a commodity, experiences his life forces as an investment which must bring him the maximum profit. His human relations are essentially those of alienated automatons. He bases his security on staying close to the herd and not being different. The very herd conformity we saw as a failed escape from separateness, callback from section 3. To soothe the unconscious despair of this aloneness, society offers many palliatives: the strict routine of bureaucratized work, the passive consumption of the amusement industry, and the satisfaction of buying ever new things. Man's happiness becomes having fun, which is simply another word for consuming. What happens to love in this landscape? Automatons cannot love. They can exchange their personality packages and hope for a fair bargain. A key and rarely discussed detail of Fromm's social critique is his analysis of the ideal modern marriage, the team. In countless articles on happy marriage, the ideal described is that of the smoothly functioning team. This, Fromm notes with cutting precision, is not too different from the idea of a smoothly functioning employee. The marriage counselor advises the husband to understand his wife, to comment favorably on her new dress. She, in turn, should understand when he comes home tired and listen attentively when he talks about his business troubles. This well-oiled relationship is merely the well-oiled relationship between two persons who remain strangers all their lives. It is a refuge from aloneness, an egoism ado egotism for two, which is mistaken for love and intimacy. Another primary form of love's disintegration, a key historical fact from the post-World War I era, was the new concept of love in which mutual sexual satisfaction was supposed to be the basis for satisfactory love relations. The belief was that love is the child of sexual pleasure. If two people learned the right sexual technique, they would love each other. Fromm argues the exact contrary is true. Sexual happiness is the result of love, not its cause. This focus on technique was largely influenced by the theories of Freud, who saw love as basically a sexual phenomenon. Freud's ideas, Fromm argues, were themselves a product of the 19th century capitalist spirit, which needed to show that man was by nature competitive and full of mutual hostility. Freud's theory of a limitless, competitive sexual drive provided this proof. These socially patterned pathologies, love as a team and love as mutual sexual satisfaction, are the normal forms of disintegration. They are the fair exchange of the marketing character, the pseudo-love of the having mode. This is the society in which we must attempt to practice the art of loving. We have seen the theory of love defined as the mature answer to the problem of human separateness, an active power of being built on care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge callbacks from sections 5, 6, 9, and we have seen its disintegration in modern society, where the marketing character reduces this art to the having mode, a possessive, alienated transaction between automatons, callback from section 13. We are now confronted with what Erich Fromm called a much more difficult problem, the practice of the art of loving. Can anything truly be learned about the practice of an art except by practicing it? Fromm was acutely aware of the expectations of the modern reader. He knew that most people, shaped by the consumer with the open mouth, would expect to be given prescriptions, a how-to-do-it-yourself guide. He begins this part of his analysis with a warning: anyone expecting such a formula will be gravely disappointed. Love is a personal experience which everyone can only have by and for himself. What can be discussed, however, are the premises of the art, the general requirements that apply to the art of loving, just as they apply to the art of carpentry, medicine, or music. The first of these general requirements is discipline. No one can become a master in any art if they do not do it in a disciplined way. Anything one does only when in the mood may be a nice hobby. But I shall never become a master in that art. This is not just discipline in the specific practice like setting aside time for meditation, but discipline in one's whole life. Here, Fromm identifies a central paradox of modern man. We think we are disciplined. Does he not spend 8 hours a day in a most disciplined way at a job which is strictly routinized? But this is a fallacy. The fact, however, is that modern man has exceedingly little self-discipline outside of the sphere of work. When he is not working, he wants to be lazy, to slouch, or, to use a nicer word, to relax. This is not true rest. It is a rarely discussed detail of Fromm's critique. This very wish for laziness is largely a reaction against the routinization of life. It is an infantile self-indulgence, a rebellion against the authoritarian, joyless rhythm of the assembly line. Because he is forced to be a cog in a machine, he has become distrustful of all discipline, even the rational discipline imposed by himself. But without this rational, willed discipline, his life becomes shattered, chaotic, and lacks in concentration. The second requirement is concentration. Anyone who ever tried to learn an art knows this. Yet, like discipline, concentration is rare in our culture. We live in a diffused mode of life. You do many things at once. You read, listen to the radio, talk, smoke, eat, drink. This is the very picture of the marketing character, the consumer with the open mouth, eager and ready to swallow everything pictures, liquor, knowledge. The clearest proof of our lack of concentration is our difficulty in being alone with ourselves. To sit still, without talking, smoking, reading, drinking, is impossible for most people. They become nervous and fidgety, needing to occupy their hands and mouths. The third requirement is patience. If one is after quick results, one never learns an art. This, too, is a virtue our industrial system actively destroys. Our whole industrial system fosters exactly the opposite quickness. Cars and airplanes are designed for speed. A machine that produces in half the time is twice as good. What is good for machines must be good for man, so goes the logic. Modern man thinks he loses something time when he does not do things quickly, yet he does not know what to do with the time he gains except kill it. The final general condition is a supreme concern with the mastery of the art. If the art is not something of supreme importance, the apprentice will remain a good dilettante, but will never become a master. Fromm notes that while this is true for all arts, the proportion of dilettantes to masters seems especially high in the art of loving. How then does one begin? Fromm notes that one learns an art indirectly. An apprentice in carpentry learns to plane wood. An apprentice in piano plays scales. As a key historical fact, Fromm explicitly references the work of Eugen Herrgel in Zen in the art of archery, noting that an apprentice in the Zen art of archery begins by doing breathing exercises. The point is that one's whole life must be devoted to it. One's own person becomes an instrument in the practice of the art and must be kept fit. To practice the art of loving, one must practice these three things in every phase of life. To practice discipline does not mean adopting the rigid, life-hostile rules of our grandfathers. It means making discipline an expression of one's own will. Something felt as pleasant. Here, he criticizes the Western unfortunate concept that its practice is supposed to be somewhat painful, and only if it is painful can it be good. The East, he writes, has recognized long ago that that which is good for man must also be agreeable. To practice concentration is by far the most difficult. The most important step is to learn to be alone with oneself without reading, listening to the radio, smoking, or drinking. This leads to one of Fromm's most essential and radical statements. Paradoxically, the ability to be alone is the condition for the ability to love. If I am attached to another person because I cannot stand on my own feet, he or she may be a lifesaver, but the relationship is not one of love. Anyone who tries this will discover its difficulty. Fromm suggests simple exercises sitting in a relaxed position, closing one's eyes, and trying to follow one's breathing, not to think about it, nor force it, but to follow it, and in doing so, to sense it. This concentration must then be applied to everything: listening to music, talking to a person, seeing a view. The activity at this very moment must be the only thing that matters. To practice this, one must avoid trivial conversation and bad company, not just vicious people, but the company of zombies, of people whose soul is dead, although their body is alive, a direct callback to the automatons of Section 13 in relation to others. Concentration means primarily to be able to listen. Most people do not listen. They do not take the other person's talk seriously. But these three qualities, discipline, concentration, and patience, are still only the general premises. To practice the art of loving requires one more, specific quality faith. To master the art of loving, then, requires more than the general practice of discipline, concentration, and patience callback from Section 14. These are the tools, but the material they must work on is our own character. Erich Fromm states that the main condition for the achievement of love is the overcoming of one's narcissism. This brings us full circle, back to the selfish character of the having mode, callback from Section 8 and 12. The narcissistic orientation is one in which one experiences as real only that which exists within oneself. The phenomena in the outside world have no reality in themselves, but are experienced only from the viewpoint of their being useful or dangerous to one. The insane person is the extreme example, where the only reality is their inner world of fears and desires. But Fromm insists that all of us are more or less insane in this respect. We all have an unobjective view of the world, one which is distorted by our narcissistic orientation. The opposite pole to narcissism is objectivity. It is the faculty to see people and things as they are, and to be able to separate this objective picture from a picture which is formed by one's desires and fears. The faculty to think objectively is reason, and the emotional attitude behind reason, Fromm argues, is humility. It is only possible to use one's reason if one has emerged from the dreams of omniscience and omnipotence which one has as a child. Therefore, the practice of love requires the development of humility, objectivity, and reason. This entire process of emergence, of birth, of waking up from the narcissistic dream, requires one final, indispensable quality: faith. The practice of the art of loving demands the practice of faith. But Fromm was acutely aware that faith is a loaded word. He immediately clarifies that he is not speaking of irrational faith, which he defines as belief, based on one's submission to irrational authority. That is just another form of symbiotic union callback from Section 4, a passive having of answers. He is speaking of rational faith. This is not a belief in a specific doctrine, but a conviction which is rooted in one's own experience of thought or feeling. It is the quality of certainty and firmness which our convictions have. It is a character trait, not a dogma. We often see faith and reason as opposites. Fromm argues they are inseparable. Rational faith is a necessary component of all rational thinking. How does a scientist, for example, make a new discovery? They do not just gather fact after fact. The process often starts with what may be called a rational vision. This vision, born from previous study, is an act of faith. It is faith in the hypothesis as a likely and plausible proposition. As a key historical fact, Fromm notes that the history of science is replete with instances of faith in reason. Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton were all imbued with an unshakable faith in reason. It was for this rational faith, this vision of truth, that Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake and Spinoza suffered excommunication. This faith is not irrational. It is rooted in the confidence in one's power of thought, observation, and judgment. This same rational faith is indispensable in human relations. Having faith in another person means to be certain of the reliability and unchangeability of his fundamental attitudes, of the core of his personality. It is not faith that he won't change his opinions, but faith that his respect for life and human dignity is part of himself, not subject to change. We must also have this faith in ourselves. We must be aware of the existence of a self, of a core in our personality which is unchangeable and which persists. This is our sense of identity. Without it, we become the marketing character, dependent on the approval of others. Callback from Section 13. Fromm states, "Only the person who has faith in himself is able to be faithful to others. This faith extends to the potentialities of others. This is the faith a mother has, not just that her child will walk, but in their potential to love, to be happy, to use his reason." This, Fromm reveals in a rare etymological detail, is the difference between education and manipulation. Manipulation is based on the absence of this faith. It assumes a child will be right only if the adults put into him what is desirable. Education, by contrast, comes from the Latin educere, which literally means to lead forth, or to bring out something which is potentially present. To have faith requires courage. It is the ability to take a risk, the readiness even to accept pain and disappointment. Whoever insists on safety and security as primary conditions of life cannot have faith. This person shuts himself off in a system of defense, where distance and possession are his means of security, and makes himself a prisoner. This is the courage of being, not the false courage of nihilism, like Mussolini's slogan, "To live dangerously." We practice this faith at every moment. It takes faith to bring up a child, faith to fall asleep, faith to begin any work. The practice begins with the small details of daily life. We must notice where and when one loses faith, and look through the rationalizations we use to cover it up. We must recognize how every betrayal of faith weakens one, and how increased weakness leads to new betrayal. When we do this, we finally recognize our deepest, most unconscious fear. While one is consciously afraid of not being loved, Fromm concludes, the real, though usually unconscious fear is that of loving. To love is the ultimate act of faith. To love means to commit oneself without guarantee, to give oneself completely in the hope that our love will produce love in the loved person. Love is not a feeling, it is not a possession. It is a practice, a judgment, and a promise. Love is an act of faith, and whoever is of little faith is also of little love. Word count 1083. We began this journey with a simple, unsettling question. Are you in love, or is it merely possession? We began, as most people do, with the assumption that love is a wonderful sensation, a matter of chance, something we fall into if we are lucky. Erich Fromm has shown us another path. He has dismantled this illusion and replaced it with a profound challenge. Love is not a feeling, but an art, and it is not a luxury. It is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the fundamental problem of human existence, the terror of our separateness. We have followed his analysis from the prison of aloneness to the many failed escapes we build for ourselves, the fleeting ecstasies of orgiastic states, the numbing busyness and sameness of herd conformity, and the most painful and deceptive prison of all, the sadomasochistic, possessive grip of symbiotic union. We learned that these failures are not accidents. They are symptoms of a character orientation that defines our age, the having mode. This is the logic of the market, the impulse of Tennyson, the character who plucks the flower and, in the name of love, kills it. It is the orientation that turns people into commodities and love into a fair bargain. The true path, Fromm showed us, is the mode of being. It is the path of Basho, who only looked carefully at the flower and let it live. This is the path of love. It is an activity, an act of productive giving. It is built on the courage to care, the readiness to respond, the humility to respect, and the profound union of knowledge. This art is not learned from a prescription. It demands the discipline of a master, the patience of a child learning to walk, the concentration of a Zen archer. It demands that we overcome our deepest narcissism, that we have the humility to see the world and the people in it as they truly are. And finally, it demands faith, not the irrational faith of submission, but the rational faith in our own powers, faith in ourselves, faith in the potential of others, and faith in the act of love itself. Love is not a safe harbor or a resting place. It is a constant challenge, a moving, growing, working together. It is the ultimate act of courage. As you prepare for sleep, let the anxious demands of the having mode, the need to possess, to control, to be secure, begin to quiet. Let the chaotic noise of the world, the trivial conversation of the automatons, fade into the background in the stillness. Perhaps you can find that quiet, active center of your own being. It is the place where you are truly alone, and it is the only place from which you can truly love. End of script. Sweet dreams.